A shadow was watching from the trees, and Deputy Cole Barrett knew the suspect was still close. But beneath the snow, an injured German shepherd was shielding 5 newborn puppies with the last of her strength. One puppy had already stopped breathing, while the mother could barely stand. Cole had only seconds to choose: chase the person responsible, or stay with the lives freezing in front of him. That decision uncovered a stolen rescue dog, a hidden trafficking network, and the truth behind a death everyone had called an accident. Yet the hardest lesson was not about catching the guilty. It was learning that staying can demand more courage than pursuit. Tell us where you're watching from, and please like, share, and subscribe to K9 Justice Tales. By the time Deputy Cole Barrett ended his shift, the road above Seeley Lake had almost disappeared. Wet snow struck the windshield in uneven bursts, thick enough to erase the lane markings and soft enough to make the forest seem farther away than it was. The last week of April was supposed to bring thawing mud and open water along the lake. Instead, winter had returned without warning and settled over the mountains as if it had forgotten something. Cole drove his dark green Ford Bronco with both hands on the wheel. He had changed out of his full-duty vest at the station, but he still wore his fitted Navy uniform beneath a heavy police jacket. His badge remained clipped at his chest, his sidearm secured at his right hip, and the radio microphone rested near his collar. At 40, Cole still carried the tall, athletic build of a man who worked the mountain roads rather than supervised them from behind a desk. His broad shoulders filled the driver's seat, but there was no wasted tension in the way he moved. Even tired, he checked mirrors, tree lines, road edges, and distances without appearing to do so. His rugged face was all quiet angles in the dim dashboard light. A thin scar disappeared into the short, dark hair above his right temple. His nose leaned slightly left from an arrest years earlier, and very short stubble darkened his jaw. The only softness in him showed when he looked into the rearview mirror. Hank lay across the back seat. The 5-year-old German shepherd had retired from active K9 duty 6 months earlier, though retirement had not convinced him that the world no longer required inspection. His black and tan body was powerful without being heavy, his upright ears turning toward every change in the Bronco's engine and every branch scraping across the roof. A jagged edge in the black saddle along Hank's left side resembled a broken lightning bolt. The tip of his left ear carried a small crescent-shaped notch, and 2 middle toes on his right front paw were darker than the rest. Cole had seen strangers describe Hank as intimidating. They had never seen him lose an argument with a closed bag of treats. "You are not on duty," Cole said. Hank opened one amber-brown eye. Cole glanced at the mirror. That look does not change policy. The eye closed again. The cabin waited 6 miles ahead, set back from the lake among lodgepole pines. It would be cold inside. Cole had let the stove burn low before leaving that morning, and the wind had probably found another gap around the kitchen window. There would be 1 plate in the drying rack, 1 cup beside the sink, and no voice asking why he was late. Cole preferred it that way. Most nights, he almost believed himself. A burst of static cracked through the radio. Cole's fingers tightened around the steering wheel before he could stop them. For 1 brief second, the Bronco vanished. Snow became dust. Pine shadows became the narrow service corridor behind the county courthouse. The radio hissed against his shoulder while someone shouted from the far end of the hall. Then Hank lifted his head. Cole breathed through his nose. Windshield, road, heater. Hank. The present returned reluctantly. Cole moved his left thumb against the hard edge of the silver memorial coin inside his jacket pocket. The coin bore Eli Mason's name on one side and the county badge on the other. Cole carried it not because he believed the dead could hear metal, but because some days grief needed a physical boundary. Eli had been his partner before Hank became theirs. 7 years had passed since the courthouse ambush, yet Cole could still measure the delay between the first shot and the moment he reached Eli. He had replayed those seconds so often they no longer behaved like memory. They had become evidence in a private trial that never adjourned. The road curved past an abandoned logging spur. Hank rose, not gradually. One moment he was lying down, the next he stood braced across the seat, ears forward and nose lifted toward the passenger side window. A low sound began in his chest. Cole eased off the accelerator. "What is it?" Hank ignored the question. His gaze locked on the snow-filled ditch beyond the headlights. The growl deepened. Cole tapped the brakes. The Bronco slid half a foot before the tires caught. He guided it toward the shoulder and stopped at an angle, leaving the engine running and the headlights aimed across the ditch. At first, Cole saw only snow, brush, and the broken gray shapes of fallen timber. Then something moved. A head lifted beneath the slope. Cole leaned forward. A German shepherd lay in a hollow of snow and black mud. She was a female, leaner than Hank, and so exhausted that the effort of raising her head made her entire body tremble. Her coat was a pale ash gold beneath the wetness, with an uneven black saddle divided by a lighter gap along her right side. She was not alone. 5 small bodies were pressed beneath her chest and belly. Damn! Cole shut off the engine. The sudden silence made the storm louder. Hank stepped toward the door. "Stay." The command stopped him, but every line of the dog's body objected. Cole took his flashlight, phone, emergency blanket, trauma kit, and a pair of heavy gloves. He opened the door and stepped into snow that immediately reached over the toes of his black boots. Cold pushed through his uniform pants. His old knee injury tightened, not yet pain, but a warning. The mother dog saw him. Her lips lifted. The sound that came from her was weak, but it carried enough meaning. Cole stopped several yards away and turned his body slightly sideways. He lowered the flashlight beam so it illuminated the ground rather than her eyes. "All right," he said quietly. "You do not know me." She tried to rise. Her front legs held for less than a second. Her rear leg folded, and she dropped back over the puppies with a sound that was more breath than cry. Cole's gaze moved across her body. A raw circular wound marked her left hind leg. Fur had been rubbed away around the ankle, as though wire or cable had tightened there repeatedly. Along her ribs, the coat had thinned in long scraped patches, not exposure, confinement. A gust shifted the snow, carrying the smell toward him. Wet fur, milk, mud, and something medicinal beneath it all. Cole looked toward the logging spur. 2 boot prints remained visible near the edge of the road before the snowfall swallowed them. Farther uphill, a narrow track cut across the fresh powder, likely from a snowmobile. Near the ditch lay a short length of coated steel cable. Someone had brought her here. The mother dog snapped when Cole moved closer. Her teeth closed on empty air several inches from his glove. "Fair warning," he murmured. One of the puppies shifted beneath her. Another made a thin squeaking sound. The smallest did not move. Cole crouched lower. Snow collected across his shoulders and melted into his hair. He could not reach the puppies without entering the mother's striking distance. He also could not leave them there while waiting for a rescue team that might not reach the road for hours. Cole slowly removed one glove and placed his bare hand against the snow between them. The mother watched his fingers. He waited. Years of police work had taught him that silence was not empty. Frightened people filled it with decisions. Animals did the same. The mother's head sagged, though her eyes stayed fixed on him. Cole moved 1 inch closer, then another. When his fingers finally reached the smallest puppy, he felt almost nothing. The body was cold, limp, and no larger than both his hands together. Cole drew it out from beneath the mother's chest. She growled but lacked the strength to follow. He opened his jacket and placed the puppy against the thermal shirt beneath his uniform. With 2 fingers, he began rubbing the tiny chest in slow, deliberate circles. Nothing. "Come on." The words escaped before he could keep them inside. The puppy's mouth hung slightly open. Cole cleared it with the corner of a clean gauze pad and rubbed again. His hands knew the rhythm. That was the problem. For a moment, he was pressing down on Eli's vest. Someone was calling for an ambulance. Blood spread beneath Cole's knees, impossibly dark against polished tile. Too late. The phrase arrived with the force of a verdict. A whine came from the Bronco. Hank stood behind the glass, nose pressed to the narrow opening above the window, his left ear tilted forward. His eyes did not leave Cole. Cole looked at him. Snow, road, Hank, not the courthouse, not Eli, here. Cole bent over the puppy and continued. Breathe, he whispered. That is the whole job right now. The puppy twitched. Cole froze. A faint movement fluttered beneath his fingers. Then the little body dragged in a thin, ragged breath. It made no real sound, only a tiny click of life somewhere in its throat, but the noise struck Cole harder than a shout. Hank gave another soft whine. I know, Cole said, though his voice had roughened. I heard it. The mother dog watched him place the puppy inside the emergency blanket. Something in her expression changed. Not trust, not gratitude, but a small redirection of fear. Her eyes moved from Cole's hands to the breathing puppy and back again. Cole photographed the scene quickly, the dog, the cable wound, the tire tracks, the remaining boot print, the snowmobile groove, and the length of wire. He enabled location data and recorded the coordinates in the Notes app on his phone. Then he keyed his radio. Dispatch, Barrett. I have an injured adult German Shepherd and 5 neonatal pups on North Logging Spur, approximately 6 miles west of the Lake Access Road. Possible animal cruelty and unlawful transport. Immediate exposure risk. Static swallowed the reply. He tried again. Dispatch, copy emergency animal recovery. A voice broke through in fragments. Barrett, repeat location. Cole recognized Deputy Lena Ortiz. Even through interference, she spoke with the clipped precision that made incomplete information useful. North Logging Spur, marker, 17. 5 live pups. 1 critical. Mother has cable injuries and possible sedation. Photographing scene now. Copy marker 17. Roads blocked above Mill Creek. Animal control unavailable. The signal cracked apart. Cole raised the radio higher. Lena, document emergency removal. I am transporting to my cabin for stabilization. Send coordinates to Game and Fish and County Animal Services. Copy transport, life safety will log. The rest vanished beneath static. It was enough. Cole returned to the mother dog. Here is what is going to happen, he said, although he knew the words were for himself as much as for her. I am taking the puppies first. You can hate me the entire time. She bared her teeth again. That seems reasonable. Using the emergency blanket as a sling, Cole moved the puppies one by one to the Bronco. Hank stayed in the rear cargo area after Cole folded the seat forward, maintaining distance from the bundle. Each time Cole returned to the ditch, the mother tried to gather herself over the shrinking space where her puppies had been. Each attempt failed sooner than the last. When only 1 puppy remained, Cole heard it. A dry metallic click from the trees above the logging spur. Not ice breaking, not a branch shifting. The sound was controlled and close, like a firearm action being checked, or the latch of a transport crate being closed by hand. Cole's right hand moved toward his holster. His eyes searched the timber. The slope offered 3 possible approaches. A narrow trail climbed left between 2 pines. A deeper shadow opened behind a stack of rotting logs. The snowmobile track angled toward higher ground. Training reduced the world to distance and cover. He could leave the final puppy in the ditch, move uphill, and possibly catch whoever was watching. The mother dog tried to rise again. Her injured leg collapsed, but she dragged herself forward with her front paws and placed her body over the last puppy. Cole's hand remained near his weapon. Inside his jacket, the memorial coin pressed against his ribs, and with it came Eli's voice, not from the storm, not as a ghost, but from an ordinary afternoon years earlier, after a reckless young deputy had chased an armed suspect away from an injured driver. Don't run toward every gunshot if somebody needs you to stay. Eli had said it while filling out paperwork, not knowing the sentence would outlive him. Cole looked at the dark hillside, then at the mother and her last puppy. He took his hand away from the holster. Not tonight. The final puppy disappeared safely into the blanket. Moving the mother required more care. Cole used a second blanket and a flat cargo mat from the Bronco, sliding them beneath her without lifting her injured leg. She snapped once near his wrist, then sagged, too weak to resist. Hank watched from behind the folded seat, body rigid but silent. Cole secured the mother in the rear cargo area behind a temporary barrier. keeping Hank forward and the puppies inside his open jacket beneath the police coat. Before closing the hatch, Cole checked the tree line one last time. Hank turned his head sharply toward two lodgepole pines above the ditch. Cole followed his gaze. A person stood between them. The figure was tall enough to be human and dark enough to disappear whenever the snowfall thickened. No face showed beneath the hood, no hand lifted. The watcher simply stood there, motionless, looking down at the Bronco. Cole reached for his flashlight. The beam struck blowing snow. By the time it reached the trees, the space between them was empty. Cole shut the hatch, moved to the driver's seat, and started the engine. As the Bronco pulled away, Hank remained standing with his front paws braced against the door, staring through the rear window at the road vanishing behind them. Cole did not need to tell him what both of them already understood. The dogs had not been abandoned in an empty forest. Someone had stayed to make certain the cold finished what had already been started. And now that person knew exactly who had taken them. The cabin had never been built for this many heartbeats. By the time Cole carried the mother dog through the door, the kitchen floor was wet with melting snow. The stove had begun to cough awake, and 5 newborn puppies were making sounds so faint they seemed to come from somewhere inside the walls. Hank entered first. He swept the room by habit, nose low, amber-brown eyes moving from the windows to the back door, then to the bundle beneath Cole's coat. The retired canine stopped when the mother dog's head lifted from the cargo mat. A warning passed between them without sound. Hank's body tightened. The mother's lips drew back. Cole stepped between them. "Separate corners," he said. Hank looked at him as if the instruction lacked imagination, but he obeyed. Cole dragged a folded exercise pen from the storage closet and opened it across the kitchen, creating a barrier from the lower cabinets to the stone hearth. Hank remained on the living room side. The mother dog lay inside the divided kitchen with the puppies, a water bowl, and enough distance to keep panic from becoming violence. The arrangement was imperfect. It was also the best Cole had. He removed his police jacket, leaving the dark navy uniform beneath, and set his duty belt on the table where he could reach it but where no swinging equipment would frighten the dog. The silver memorial coin stayed in his inside shirt pocket. The weakest puppy had stopped making noise. Cole placed all 5 inside a shallow wooden crate lined with wool blankets. He filled 2 glass bottles with warm water, wrapped them in towels, and positioned them along the sides rather than directly beneath the litter. Too much heat, too quickly, could be as dangerous as cold. He knew that from emergency training. Knowing did not make his hands steadier. 4 puppies shifted toward the warmth. The smallest lay on its side, its pale muzzle motionless against the wool. Cole touched 2 fingers beneath its ribs. Nothing. Behind the barrier, the mother dog tried to rise. Her wounded hind leg folded immediately, but she dragged herself several inches closer to the crate. "I am not taking him," Cole said. The words sounded absurd in the quiet room. The dog did not understand their meaning, only his nearness to her offspring. Cole wrapped the puppy in a dry towel and began rubbing along its chest and spine. The tiny body had warmed slightly during the drive, but its muscles remained slack. "Come on." No breath. He adjusted the puppy's head, cleared the mouth again, then pressed one fingertip lightly against the chest. The stove door snapped as the iron expanded. Cole's body reacted before his mind did. His shoulders locked. The cabin narrowed. The puppy in his hands became Eli's vest beneath his palms, hard plates under blood-soaked fabric. Radio voices overlapped in a hallway, full of dust and broken glass. He had been trained to move toward danger. He had reached Eli anyway. Still too late. Cole stopped rubbing. The puppy remained silent. From the other side of the pen came the soft scrape of nails over wood. Hank approached without looking at the mother dog. He lowered his head beside the barrier and pressed the side of his muzzle through the bars until it touched Cole's wrist. Warm fur, steady pressure, no command, no demand. Cole looked down at the crescent notch in Hank's left ear and the dark toes resting against the floor. The cabin returned by pieces, stove, wool, dog breath against his skin. The small weight in his hands, Cole exhaled. "Still here," he said. Hank did not move. Cole resumed the slow rhythm. Rub, pause, clear the mouth, rub again. The puppy jerked once. Cole held perfectly still. A thin breath entered the tiny chest, so shallow that it barely lifted the towel. Then came a sound, weak, sharp, offended. Hank's tail struck the floor once. The mother dog lifted her head. The puppy squeaked again. Cole let out a breath that had nowhere else to go. "You are trouble," he whispered. The name came into his mind before he could refuse it. Scout. He did not say it aloud. Naming created expectations, and Cole had spent years learning how expensive expectations could become. He placed Scout beside the others. One sibling immediately pushed against him, sharing warmth without ceremony. Only then did Cole notice that the mother dog had stopped showing her teeth. She was still watching him, but the threat in her face had changed, not disappeared, changed. Her ash gold coat hung in wet strands along her ribs. In the stovelight, the color resembled the pale gray left after a fire had burned through the night. "Ash," Cole said quietly. Her left ear shifted. It was not recognition, but the sound settled between them. The radio on the table hissed. Cole answered before the static could sharpen into something worse. "Barrett." Lena Ortiz's voice came through in broken intervals. "Road crews say Mill Creek is blocked. County Animal Control cannot reach you until daylight. I contacted Dr. Whitaker. You gave her the cabin location. You have had the same address for 6 years. That was not the question. She was already loading her vehicle." Cole glanced at the mother dog. "Tell her the patient bites." A pause. "Claire will assume that is true of everyone at your cabin." The radio cut out before Cole could respond. He almost smiled. Almost. While waiting, he cleaned what he could without crossing the mother's limit. A bowl of lukewarm water went within reach. She sniffed it but did not drink. Cole placed a plate with softened dog food farther away from the puppies, then backed behind the barrier. Hank watched every movement. "You are not helping by staring." Hank turned his head slightly, which was technically less staring. An hour passed in small tasks. Towels were changed. The stove dampened. The puppies were checked one by one. Ash drank only after Cole sat on the floor with his back partly turned. That mattered more than he wanted it to. Headlights finally moved through the pines outside. Hank rose before the engine stopped. A woman crossed the yard carrying a leather medical bag in one hand and a plastic crate in the other. Snow clung to the shoulders of her gray barn coat. She was lean, straight-backed, and moved with the efficient balance of someone accustomed to handling frightened animals in bad places. Dr. Claire Whitaker entered without wasting time on greetings. At 43, Claire had a long oval face, hazel brown eyes, and dark blonde hair tied low beneath a gray knit cap. A pale streak of early silver showed near her left temple when she removed the hat. Faint freckles crossed the bridge of her nose. She took in the divided room, the 5 puppies, Hank waiting beyond the barrier, Ash's posture, Cole's damp uniform, and the duty belt on the table. "You documented the recovery?" Photos, coordinates, visible tracks, cable fragment. Lena logged emergency transport. "Good, you could pretend to be surprised. I have met you." Claire knelt beside the pen and placed her bag down slowly. Ash growled. Claire did not look directly at her. She turned her shoulder, lowered her hands, and waited. "You have been disappointed by people," she said softly. "I will try not to be another one tonight." Cole glanced at her. Claire opened the pen only after Cole positioned himself near the puppies, and Hank moved farther back. She examined the litter first, using a thermometer, warmed fluids, and small measured drops of goat milk formula. Scout resisted the feeding syringe with more energy than he had possessed 20 minutes earlier. Claire's mouth shifted. "That is useful." "What is?" "Anger." Cole looked at the puppy. "He has enough for his size." Claire checked all 5, then turned her attention to Ash. The examination happened in negotiated inches. Ash allowed Claire to look at the cable wound only while Cole remained beside the crate and kept one hand visible on the floor. Each time Claire touched the injured leg, Ash's muscles tightened beneath the thin coat. "She gave birth recently," Claire said. "Hours, not days." She is dehydrated and hypothermic, but the temperature is coming up. The wound is deep enough to hurt and shallow enough that she could still move. Could she have walked from the road? Not far, not carrying herself like this. Claire ran gloved fingers along the rubbed patches over Ash's ribs. The fur had worn away in parallel lines. This was repeated contact, she said. Hard plastic or metal. She paced inside something too narrow to turn comfortably. A crate, a transport box, perhaps. Cole handed her the cable fragment sealed in a clean evidence bag. Claire examined it without opening the seal. Not a farm tether. No, hog snare cable, modified with coated wire. Cole looked toward Ash. She escaped? Or someone removed her and left the injury untreated? Neither possibility improved the room. Claire cleaned the wound as much as Ash allowed, administered warmed fluids under the skin, and gave medication appropriate for a nursing mother. She worked without rushing and without pretending calm meant safety. Hank remained behind the barrier until Cole wiped a streak of mud from Ash's flank with a clean cloth. Then Hank stood. His nose lifted. He walked to the barrier, sniffed once, and sneezed sharply. After a second sniff, his expression changed. The looseness vanished from his face. Cole knew that look. Hank had worn it around narcotics lockers, explosive residue, and vehicle compartments that contained something a driver had denied existed. Cole held the cloth near the bars. Hank sniffed, withdrew, then looked directly at Cole. Claire took the cloth and smelled it herself. Sweet, she said, barely, medicinal. She opened a small sterile bag and sealed the cloth inside. Could be xylazine. Could be another sedative in the same family. The dose was either poorly calculated or given by someone who did not care what happened after. Cole looked at the puppies. Would it affect them? If she was dosed before delivery, yes. It could explain Scout's breathing and the tremors in two of the others. The room seemed colder, despite the stove. Claire continued the examination. Her fingers paused near Ash's shoulder. There. She parted the wet coat and felt beneath the skin. A microchip. Cole leaned closer, careful not to cross Ash's line. Claire removed a handheld scanner from her bag. The device beeped once as it passed over the shoulder. A number appeared on the screen. Claire read it twice. That format is not local. Can you search it? Not without a connection. Cole lifted his phone. No signal. Claire scanned again, then wrote the number on a medical sheet. When she checked Ash's inner right thigh, her expression hardened. A small tattoo had been placed there long ago. Someone had cut or burned across part of it, leaving several characters unreadable. They tried to remove identification, Cole said. They tried to make it difficult, Claire corrected. Removing it completely would have caused more damage. She photographed the mark with a scale beside it. For the first time since arriving, Claire stopped moving. The stillness was subtle, but Cole noticed. You have seen this numbering system, something close. Where? Claire sat back on her heels. For a few seconds she watched Ash breathe. My husband kept field notes, she said. Daniel worked as a wildlife biologist and conservation consultant. He was tracking missing working dogs before he died. Cole knew the outline of Daniel Whitaker's death. Everyone near Seeley Lake did. A snowmobile had gone over a ridge near Morel Creek 2 winters earlier. Weather, poor visibility, mechanical failure. The phrases had hardened into official certainty. Claire continued. Search and rescue dogs, police dogs, breeding females with documented bloodlines, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. Daniel believed some were being moved through private training facilities, then sold with altered records. Who owned the facilities? Claire closed the scanner case. Grant Mallory owned one of them. The name carried weight in the county. Grant donated equipment to volunteer fire crews. He paid for K-9 training demonstrations at schools. His ranch sponsored the Winter Relief Fund and appeared in photographs beside uniformed officers every December. Cole had shaken his hand twice. Both times Grant had remembered his name. Daniel had evidence. He had patterns. Claire's voice remained controlled. Vehicle numbers, crate seals, dates, missing dogs, not enough for a warrant. Not enough for people who wanted him to be wrong. And then he died. Claire looked at him. Yes, no accusation entered the word. That made it heavier. Before either could say more, the radio broke the silence. Lena's voice came through, clearer now. I reached the logging spur, found your markers. Snowmobile track continues northwest before the wind wipes it. I also recovered a glove and part of a plastic seal. Photograph in place before removal, Cole said. Already done. Claire rose and moved toward the radio. Can you read the seal number? Static passed between them. Lena gave the digits. Claire went still. Cole watched her cross to the medical bag and open a narrow interior pocket. From it, she removed a small black field notebook held shut by a worn elastic band. She turned several pages. Her finger stopped beside a column of handwritten numbers. The final 6 digits matched. Daniel's handwriting seemed to change the air in the room. Claire did not speak for several seconds. Cole looked at the page, then at Ash behind the barrier. The dog had lowered her head near the puppies, but one gray-yellow eye remained open. Daniel found the same kind of seal, Cole said, the week before he died. The reappearance of an old number was not proof of murder. Cole knew that. Claire knew it too, but it was no longer only a wounded dog in a ditch. Something unfinished had walked into his cabin beneath 5 newborn bodies. Morning arrived pale and exhausted. Lena returned shortly after sunrise. She entered wearing a navy winter patrol jacket, dark hair secured in a low bun, and a yellow evidence pouch clipped to her belt. Her compact build carried the restless energy of someone who had spent the night working instead of waiting. She handed Cole the preliminary scene log. The glove has chemical residue. Seal fragment is bagged. Tire impression is partial. Any plate? No vehicle at the road. She looked toward the pen. Ash watched her without lifting her head. Lena's expression softened only for a moment. 5, all alive, Claire said. Lena nodded once, accepting the information as something that deserved no celebration until it remained true. On her way back, she had noticed a black pickup parked on the rise beyond Cole's access road. The vehicle sat too far away to belong to a visitor and too long to be lost. When Lena turned around to approach, it left before she could read the plate. Could be a hunter, she said. In this storm? Cole asked. Could be someone who enjoys parking without purpose. Hank walked to the window and stared toward the rise. No one dismissed the possibility again. The day passed under a tension that never fully announced itself. Claire remained to monitor Ash. Lena transmitted the evidence log to the county system and requested a records search on the microchip. Cole repaired the broken draft around the kitchen window and checked the road more often than necessary. By nightfall, the snow had weakened. Hank was the first to react. He rose from beside the couch and approached the front window. The hair along his shoulders lifted. He did not bark. Cole took his flashlight and opened the door. The porch was empty. No engine sounded on the road. No footsteps moved through the trees. A bouquet lay on the top step. 6 white lilies had been tied with a narrow black ribbon. Snow gathered inside their open petals. There was no card. Claire came to the doorway behind Cole. She stopped when she saw them. Her face did not collapse. It became still in a way Cole had learned to fear more than tears. Daniel's funeral, she said. Grant brought white lilies. Cole looked past the flowers toward the dark tree line. Someone knew Claire was inside his cabin. Someone knew where the dog had been taken. And whoever had left the lilies understood exactly which memory would make the warning unmistakable. By 8 the next morning, the lilies had begun to brown at the edges. Cole had left them on the porch where they had been found. He photographed the arrangement, the black ribbon, the stems, and the faint impression left in the snow beside the top step. There were no useful footprints. Whoever had delivered the flowers had approached from the frozen side yard, where wind stripped the surface clean before dawn. Inside, the cabin smelled of antiseptic, warm milk, damp wool, and coffee no one remembered pouring. Claire sat at the kitchen table with Daniel's black field notebook open beneath the hanging lamp. She had not touched the lilies. She had not asked Cole to remove them either. Hank lay near the divided kitchen, his body angled so he could watch both the front door and Ash. The mother dog rested behind the exercise pen with her 5 puppies gathered close to her belly. Her eyes followed every movement, but the frantic edge had diminished. Scout remained the smallest, though he had developed enough strength to push his siblings away from the warmest fold of blanket. Cole stood at the window, watching the road. "Nothing has moved for 20 minutes, Claire said. "That does not mean nothing is there. It means you have been staring at the same pine tree for 20 minutes. Cole glanced at her. Claire turned another page in Daniel's notebook. "The tree appears nervous." The joke was dry enough to survive the room. Before Cole could answer, tires approached through the slush. Lena Ortiz parked beside the Bronco and entered carrying a county laptop beneath one arm. Her navy patrol jacket was wet across the shoulders, and the yellow evidence pouch at her belt had been replaced by a sealed gray case. She removed her gloves with her teeth, set the computer on the table, and looked once toward the puppies. "All 5? Claire nodded. "All 5. Lena opened the laptop. "I received the federal chip return." Cole moved away from the window. The search had gone through the National Working Dog Registry rather than an ordinary pet database. Lena entered her credentials, opened the report, and turned the screen toward them. A photograph appeared. The dog in it stood on a rocky slope beneath a red search harness. She was healthier, heavier through the shoulders, and alert in a way the injured mother behind the pen could no longer afford to be. Yet the divided saddle, the cream streak below the left eye, and the slight outward angle of the left ear were unmistakable. The registered name read, Astra, Idaho Regional Search and Rescue. "Female, 4 years old," Lena said. "Certified wilderness tracking and live-find indication. Owned by the Clearwater Volunteer Search Team." Claire looked from the photograph to Ash. "Astra," she said quietly. Ash's ear shifted at the sound. Cole noticed. The report continued. Astra had disappeared 8 months earlier while being transported to a multi-agency training exercise in western Montana. The vehicle carrying her had supposedly suffered an electrical failure near a mountain turnout. According to the driver, Astra forced open an unsecured crate and escaped into the timber. No body had been found. No reliable tracks had been documented. The driver resigned 3 days later. "Where is he now?" Cole asked. "Unknown," Lena said. "He left Idaho and abandoned his lease. His phone was disconnected. The last recorded vehicle registration tied to him was sold for cash in Nevada." Cole read the next line. "Veterinary record. Pregnancy confirmed approximately 8 months ago." He looked toward the pen. Claire understood first. She was already carrying the litter when she disappeared. "Early stage," Lena said. The rescue team planned to retire her temporarily after the training exercise. 8 months. Astra had not escaped into the forest and survived alone until giving birth. Her coat bore the history of confinement, the sedative residue, the damaged tattoo, the cable wound, and the altered identification formed a single ugly line. Someone had taken a pregnant search dog and kept her alive long enough to profit from what she carried. Cole closed the laptop halfway. Lena looked at him. "That is still an inference." "I know. We have to keep saying that. I know." Claire's hand rested on Daniel's notebook. He wrote about pregnant working dogs. She turned several pages until she found a section marked with narrow paper tabs. Daniel's handwriting filled the margins around lists of vehicle numbers, weather observations, veterinary supply orders, and dates. 3 entries carried the initials GM. Beside one was the phrase, "Premium litter reserved before transfer." Another read, "False ownership papers issued after whelping." Claire followed the line with one finger. "He thought Grant was selecting dogs with strong working pedigrees," she said. "Police canines, rescue dogs, breeding females, animals whose bloodlines already had value. Then selling the puppies as privately bred stock," Lena said. "With clean paperwork," Cole added. Claire nodded. "And no questions about where the mother came from." Scout crawled across the blanket and collided with Ash's front leg. She lowered her muzzle and moved him back toward the center of the litter with practiced care. The motion was ordinary. That made the conversation harder. Cole reached for the radio. "I need Owen." Game Warden Owen McAllister arrived before noon in a state vehicle crusted with road salt and snow. He stepped into the cabin carrying a hard evidence case and a metal thermos dented along one side. At 58, Owen was compact and thick through the forearms, built less like a man who trained in a gym than one who had spent 30 years pulling boats, traps, and injured animals from places they did not wish to leave. His wind-reddened face sat beneath a gray knit cap, and a broad silver mustache covered most expressions before they could become public. Ash growled when he approached the pen. Owen stopped. "Understood, Mom." He shifted 2 steps away. Hank watched him, then sneezed at Owen's boots. Owen looked down. "I cleaned these. He has standards," Cole said. "So did my first wife. Neither of them appreciated fieldwork." Claire almost smiled, though the notebook remained open before her. Owen's humor left when he saw Daniel's entries. He removed his cap and sat at the table. For a long moment, he said nothing. "I saw these numbers before," he said at last. Claire's expression did not change. "Daniel showed them to you. He showed me patterns, missing dogs, transport routes, sedative purchases that did not match declared animal counts." Owen rubbed one thumb against the dent in his thermos. "He wanted me to push for a search warrant on Mallory's training property. And you did not. I took it to the county attorney. We had no witness, no direct possession, no confirmed stolen animal on Grant's land. The answer was no." Claire closed the notebook. "You told Daniel to find something stronger." Owen looked at her. "Yes." The word contained no defense. "I thought I was keeping the case alive," he continued. "I thought asking him to wait was safer than letting him walk into a legal wall Grant could hide behind." He did not wait. No. The cabin held the admission without softening it. Cole had heard guilt delivered in many forms: anger, explanation, silence. Owen gave his without asking anyone to absolve him. That made Cole trust it more. Owen opened his evidence case. He documented the seal fragment, collected a controlled swab from the cloth carrying the sedative odor, and placed the cable sample into a separate container. Lena transferred photographs and coordinates into the official case file, while Claire provided veterinary observations. The process was slow. That was the point. A case built too quickly could be pulled apart by anyone with money and patience. Grant Mallory possessed both. Owen set 2 trail cameras near the tree line and another covering the access road. He also requested a rotating patrol presence outside the cabin, though he warned Cole that county manpower was limited by the storm. "What about Grant?" Claire asked. "We interview him when we know which questions we can afford to reveal," Owen said. "Until then, we do not teach him what we have." Cole thought of the lilies. "He already knows Claire is here. He knows enough to frighten her," Owen replied. "That is not necessarily the same thing. The distinction was important. It did not make the flowers less white." Lena returned to the county office that afternoon to upload Daniel's notes through the secure evidence system. Cole went with her, unwilling to let the notebook or the chip report travel without direct custody. The sheriff's substation occupied the ground floor of an old municipal building near the highway. Wet coats hung beside a humming radiator. The front desk smelled of printer toner and burnt coffee. Deputy Travis Bell stood near the dispatch counter when Cole entered. Travis was 41, slightly shorter than Cole, and heavier through the middle. His navy uniform sat loosely at the shoulders, and fatigue darkened the skin beneath his pale green eyes. A cracked digital watch showed beneath his sleeve. He had been trying to quit smoking for nearly a year, though the flattened outline of a cigarette pack still lived in his breast pocket. Cole had worked with him for 6 years. Travis was not brave, but until that afternoon, Cole had never considered him dishonest. Lena placed the sealed notebook packet on the evidence counter. "Working dog theft case?" Travis asked. His tone was casual. His right thumb rubbed the edge of the cigarette pack through the fabric. Cole noticed because Travis always did it when speaking to angry drivers or supervisors. When he wanted time to choose the safest version of the truth. "Possible theft," Cole said. "Mallory involved?" The question came too quickly. Lena looked up from the log sheet. Cole kept his voice neutral. "Why would he be?" Travis shrugged. "Grant runs the biggest training facility in the county. People will connect the name whether it is fair or not. Did you? No. His thumb continued moving. Cole glanced toward the route assignment board behind dispatch. Travis's name appeared repeatedly beside the North Highway checkpoints used during winter livestock inspections, the same corridor where several missing working dogs had last been transported. Cole did not accuse him. Suspicion was not evidence, even when it wore a familiar face. Lena finished the transfer and left the notebook in secured storage. Before they departed, Cole requested copies of every checkpoint log Travis had signed during the previous 18 months. He did not tell Travis. When Cole returned to the cabin near dusk, Grant Mallory was waiting beside the porch. His black SUV stood at the end of the drive, polished enough to look wrong against the dirty snow. Grant wore a charcoal downcoat over a dark turtleneck, tailored trousers, and clean black leather boots. His steel gray hair had been brushed neatly back, and his short gray beard appeared measured rather than grown. He held 2 unopened bags of premium dog food beneath one arm. Folded blankets rested on the hood of the SUV. The performance had been designed before he arrived. Hank stepped from the Bronco and stopped beside Cole. He wore no tactical harness, only his thick black collar, but his posture changed the space between the two men. Grant smiled. Deputy Barrett, Mr. Mallory. I heard you recovered an injured German Shepherd, from whom small towns do not require formal announcements. Cole glanced toward the cabin. Claire stood just inside the doorway, one hand resting against the frame. Grant followed his gaze. Dr. Whitaker, I am glad someone qualified is attending to the animal. Claire did not answer. Grant placed the food on the porch rail. My facility may have a claim on the dog, he said. One of our breeding females was transferred through this region last year. We have had occasional identification problems with contractors. You lost a pregnant search and rescue dog from Idaho, Cole asked. The smile remained. I said there may be a claim. Grant removed a leather folder from inside his coat and offered it. Cole did not take it. Leave the documents on the rail. Grant's eyes moved briefly to Cole's badge, then to Hank. You are treating this as evidence? I am treating it as an active investigation. Into what? That depends on what the evidence establishes. Grant exhaled softly, almost sympathetically. Cole, may I call you Cole? No. The refusal was small, but it shifted the conversation away from the familiarity Grant had intended. Grant set the folder beside the dog food. I respect careful police work. I also understand that personal stress can make ordinary facts appear connected. You have endured more than most men should. The reference to Eli entered the conversation without being named. Cole felt the memorial coin against his chest. He did not touch it. My medical history is not relevant to ownership of the dog. Of course not. Claire stepped onto the porch. She carried no notebook and no evidence bag, only a folded scrap of paper. Do you recognize Transport Seal Series 47B913? She asked. Grant looked at her. For less than a second, the muscles beside his mouth tightened. Then the pleasant expression returned. No, Claire had not given him the complete number. Only the section Daniel had circled 3 times. It appeared in Daniel's notes, she said. Daniel wrote many things when he became unwell. Claire's face went pale, but she did not step back. He was not unwell. Grief often revises the dead into people who were never frightened or mistaken. Cole saw Grant understand too late that he had chosen the wrong weapon. Claire folded the paper once. Leave. Grant looked at Cole. Cole said nothing. He did not need to. Grant put on his gloves. Storms erase tracks quickly in this country, he said. Sometimes people should let the weather do its work. He walked back to the SUV without taking the food or the blankets. Hank watched until the taillights vanished. That night, Owen stationed 2 officers on the lower access road, while Lena remained at the cabin to review the first checkpoint files. The rock came through the side window at 10:17. Glass burst across the floor. Cole pulled Claire down behind the kitchen island as Hank lunged toward the sound. Ash threw herself over the puppies, teeth exposed, her injured leg shaking beneath her. A fist-sized stone rolled beneath the table. Paper had been tied around it with black cord. Cole held Hank's collar before opening the note. Give back the dog before the 5 small ones pay. A snowmobile engine started beyond the trees. Hank strained once toward the door, then stopped when Cole ordered him back. Owen's officers pursued the sound, but lost the track where fresh snow crossed the logging road. Within 20 minutes, Owen expanded the perimeter and requested 2 additional county units. They had barely arrived when dispatch issued a priority call from the southern ridge. A family with 2 children reportedly trapped inside a vehicle sliding toward a ravine. The closest 2 officers left immediately. Lena studied the dispatch screen on her phone. No callback number, she said. Location source, Cole asked. Voice call routed through an internet service. Coordinates were given verbally. Owen's face hardened beneath his silver mustache. They knew exactly when those units reached the cabin. Cole looked toward the broken window, then toward the county patrol schedule Lena had placed on the table. The rock was not the most important message sent that night. Someone knew the officer's arrival time. Someone knew how many remained. Someone had known Claire was at the cabin before the lilies were delivered. The threat was no longer standing somewhere beyond the trees. Part of it had access to a badge, a radio, and the machinery meant to keep them safe. Scouts stopped nursing shortly after noon. There was no dramatic warning. One moment, the pale puppy was pushing weakly against Ash's belly. The next, his mouth slipped free, and his body stiffened beneath Claire's hand. His front legs drew inward. A tremor passed through him, too fast and fine to be mistaken for cold. Claire lifted him onto a folded towel. Cole, dim the lamp. Cole crossed the kitchen without asking why. Hank rose from the other side of the barrier, his dark saddle tightening across his back as every muscle came alert. Ash tried to follow Scout. Her injured leg failed, but she dragged herself against the exercise pen until the metal frame shook. He is still breathing, Claire said. Keep her where she can see him. Cole knelt between Ash and the towel, not blocking her view. Scout's small body trembled again. His cream-colored forehead pressed against Claire's palm, the narrow pale streak above his nose nearly lost beneath her fingers. What is happening? Cole asked. Neurological irritation, possibly from sedative exposure before delivery. His blood sugar may also be dropping. Claire placed a small amount of glucose solution along Scout's gums. She waited, watching his chest and eyes. The tremor weakened but did not stop. I have anticonvulsant medication at the clinic, she said. A dose small enough for him has to be measured properly. Can Lena bring it? She is tracing the false emergency call with state communications. The southern route is still unstable, and I do not want someone unfamiliar pulling medication from my cabinet. Cole looked toward the boarded window. After the rock, Owen had stationed an armed conservation officer at the cabin and arranged patrol passes along the lower road. The cameras were working again. Every door had been checked twice. It should have felt safer. It did not. Owen McAllister stood near the stove, one hand around his dented thermos. He had returned that morning to review the perimeter after the false rescue call emptied half the coverage. I will stay here, he said. Deputy Pierce is outside. You take the dog and get the medicine. Hank's ears turned at the word dog. Cole glanced at him. You are coming. Hank moved toward the door before the sentence was finished. Claire wrapped Scout in a warm towel and returned him beside Ash. If he seizes again before we return, keep the room quiet. Do not force milk. Owen, use the radio immediately. Owen gave her a solemn nod. Yes, doctor. You are saying that in a way that suggests you intend to improvise. I have been accused of creativity. You have been accused of many things. Owen's silver mustache moved over what might have been a smile. The exchange did not remove the fear from the room, but it made the fear fit inside something manageable. Cole took his duty belt, winter jacket, and keys. Before leaving, he crouched near the barrier. Ash's gray-yellow eyes remained fixed on Scout. Cole could feel the strain in her, the need to gather all 5 puppies beneath her body and refuse the world access. We are bringing something back, he said. Ash did not understand the promise. Cole made it anyway. The drive into Seeley Lake took 40 minutes. Snow had softened into wet flakes that struck the windshield and slid away in heavy streaks. The storm no longer hid the road completely, but it left slush deep enough to pull at the tires. Claire sat beside Cole with her medical bag between her boots. Hank occupied the back seat, upright and restless. Cole checked the mirror. Hank was not looking at the road behind them. He was looking toward the direction of the cabin. "He knows Scout is sick," Claire said. "He knows the household is out of position. Is that what he calls us? He has not shared the command chart." Claire rested one hand over the bag. Her fingers were steady, but the stillness looked deliberate. Daniel used to say dogs understand absence before humans do. Cole kept his eyes on the road. Did he say anything that was not written like a field guide? He complained about taxes. That helps. He was also deeply offended by instant coffee. Reasonable man. The clinic stood behind an old pharmacy near the highway, its front windows pale beneath the storm. Cole parked beside the rear entrance. Across the road, a black SUV waited outside the feed warehouse. The engine was running. Hank saw it at the same moment Cole did. The German Shepherd lowered his head, amber-brown eyes fixed through the side window. "Stay with me," Cole said. Hank remained still, though not relaxed. Claire unlocked the clinic. Inside, fluorescent lights revealed narrow shelves, stainless steel counters, and a row of labeled drawers. Claire removed her winter coat, tied back her dark blonde hair, and moved immediately toward the medication cabinet. Cole stayed near the front window. Grant Mallory stepped out of the SUV. A second man followed. He was taller than Grant and built heavily through the shoulders and neck. A gray-green hunting coat strained across his back. His nose had been broken badly enough to lean right, and the red, split skin across his knuckles suggested a man who preferred tools requiring force. Cole recognized him from county records. Rusk Danner, former attack dog trainer. 2 complaints of excessive force at private facilities. Neither had resulted in charges because witnesses withdrew. Hank gave no growl. He simply moved in front of Cole's legs. The bell above the clinic door rang. Grant entered first, carrying the leather folder he had left at Cole's cabin. Rusk came behind him and closed the door. "Dr. Whitaker," Grant said. "Deputy Barrett." Claire did not turn from the locked medicine drawer. "The clinic is closed. This will not take long." Grant's charcoal coat was dry despite the weather. His gray hair remained perfectly arranged, and his expression suggested they had gathered for a board meeting rather than a confrontation. Rusk scanned the room. His gaze stopped on Hank. The K9 stood silent, black collar visible above his tan chest. The crescent notch in his left ear and the broken lightning edge of his saddle gave him a worn, unmistakable silhouette. Rusk's mouth tightened. "Retired dog," he said. Cole looked at him. "You keep records on mine too?" Grant placed the folder on the counter. "These documents establish a potential ownership interest in the female." "Potential is doing a lot of work," Cole said. The Mallory facility obtained breeding rights to several working dogs through subcontractors. There may have been confusion during transfer. Claire turned. There was no confusion. Astra was stolen from Idaho. Grant's eyes rested on her. "A claim has been made. That is not the same thing as proof. The chip identifies her owner," Cole said. "The Clearwater search team has not transferred title to your facility." Grant opened the folder. Inside were copies of vaccination forms, breeding agreements, and a transport authorization. Cole did not touch them. The signatures looked correct at a glance. That meant nothing. "Leave the originals for forensic review," he said. "They are copies, then they establish even less." Grant's pleasant expression cooled by degrees. "I am offering to cover the animal's treatment. All of it. The female and her litter can be transferred to my facility, where trained staff can care for them properly." "You mean take custody of evidence," Cole said. "I mean remove 5 vulnerable animals from a cabin guarded by armed officers and shattered windows." 6 animals, Claire corrected, "the mother and 5 puppies." Rusk looked toward her. "The light-colored male will require separate care." Silence settled across the clinic. Cole did not move, neither did Grant. Claire's eyes shifted to Rusk. No photograph of Scout had been released. No report described coat color or sex. Even the official chip file concerned Ash alone. Cole let the silence lengthen. Rusk realized what he had said. He tried to recover with a shrug. Most litters have one that presents differently. Presents differently? Cole asked. I have handled dogs for 20 years, and you guess the weakest puppy is a pale male? Grant closed the folder. Rusk speaks imprecisely. No, Cole said. He spoke specifically. Hank's body remained between Cole and the two men. Rusk watched the dog with the practiced calculation of someone assessing distance to a bite. Claire picked up the measured syringe pack from the counter and placed it inside her medical bag. You should leave. Grant's voice remained soft. You are frightened, Claire. That is understandable. Daniel filled your life with suspicions, and now an injured dog has given them shape. Claire zipped the bag. Daniel wrote that someone accepted a deposit for a pale male puppy before the litter was born. Grant's face did not change. Rusk's did. His eyes moved toward Grant before he could stop them. That glance mattered more than denial. Cole saw Claire see it too. Grant turned to leave. At the door he paused beside Hank. A working dog becomes dangerous when it stops understanding who gives the commands. Cole rested one hand lightly on Hank's collar. Hank understands perfectly. Grant stepped outside. Rusk followed, but not before looking back once at the medical bag. The SUV pulled away. Claire remained at the counter, one palm flat against the stainless steel. You never told me about the deposit, Cole said. I was not certain the note meant this litter. You are now? She opened Daniel's notebook from the medical bag and found a line written near the back. Pale male requested. Sire from Mallory line. Payment before whelping. Daniel thought Grant had arranged a breeding between a stolen female and one of his registered males, Claire said. A buyer paid in advance for a puppy with a recessive light coat. Scout, possibly. Cole looked through the window at the empty road. The weakest puppy was not valuable despite being fragile. He was valuable because someone had already bought him. The drive back began under heavier snow. They had gone less than 5 miles when the road curved beneath a steep bank. A section of wet snow and mud slid down ahead of the Bronco, spreading across both lanes with a low, thick sound. Cole stopped. The obstruction was not massive, but clearing it would take more time than Scout had. Claire studied the ridge. There is an old forestry track above Miller Creek. I know it. Daniel used it during spring surveys. It has not been maintained. It still reaches the cabin road. Cole looked at the darkening sky. The safer choice was to wait for a plow. The useful choice was not. He reversed carefully and turned onto the narrow track. Branches scraped both sides of the Bronco. Mud dragged at the tires beneath the snow. Twice Cole had to slow almost to a stop where runoff had carved channels across the path. Hank shifted continuously in the back. He did not settle once. Easy, Cole said. Hank pressed his nose to the cracked window and drew in the air. His ears went rigid. Claire looked back. What is it? Cole did not answer. The unease in Hank had changed. This was no longer impatience about Scout. It was scent, distance, or some pattern Cole could not access. Cole increased speed where the track widened. The cabin roof finally appeared through the pines. No porch light burned. Deputy Pierce's patrol vehicle stood near the shed with the driver's door open. Cole stopped the Bronco before reaching the steps. Hank was out the moment the rear door opened. Close, Cole ordered. The K-9 moved ahead but stayed within command range, nose low. The back door of the cabin hung open. One trail camera lay in the snow beneath its tree, the mounting strap cut. The other camera had been rotated toward the empty road, leaving the rear approach outside its view. Cole drew his sidearm. Stay behind me, he told Claire. They entered through the kitchen. A chair had overturned near the stove. Milk formula streaked the floor. The exercise pen had been pushed inward. 3 puppies cried from the wooden crate. A 4th whimpered beneath the lower shelf beside the pantry. Claire rushed to them. 4, she said, 4 here. Cole already knew which one was missing. Ash's bedding was empty. Scout was gone. From the woodshed came a low groan. Hank reached the doorway first and stopped beside a dark smear on the boards. Blood. Owen lay behind a stack of split logs, half covered by fallen burlap sacks. The gray knit cap was gone, and blood ran from a wound above his ear into his silver hair. His sidearm remained secured in its holster. Claire knelt beside him. Owen, his eyelids moved. Cole checked the room beyond him. No attacker remained. Pierce, Cole asked. Owen's mouth worked. "Gone after a radio call," he whispered. Voice sounded county. "Said you needed the lower gate opened. Who hit you?" "Rusk." The name came with effort. "Back door." "He had another man. They went for the pen." Owen tried to sit. Claire held him down. "Ash fought them," he continued. "They could not carry the whole litter. Took the pale pup. Played his cries outside." Cole looked toward the open door. She followed. Broke through before I could stop her. Hank had already found the trail. Blood marked the snow beyond the porch. Small drops from Ash's wounded leg. Crossing boot prints and a narrow drag line. A chemical sweetness clung to the air, sedative. Cole's radio came alive. "Cole, answer. Lena." He keyed it. "Cabin breached. Owen injured. Ash and Scout taken. Pierce missing from post." "I found Travis Bell's unit near the old communications tower," Lena said. "Vehicle abandoned. Inside was a radio spoofing device, copied frequencies, and the cabin protection schedule. Travis, no sign of him. Tire tracks indicate another vehicle picked someone up, but the boot pattern does not match what you described at the cabin." Cole looked at Owen. Travis had opened the door for Grant, but he might not have crossed through it himself. That distinction could wait. "Get here," Cole said. "Bring medical support and tactical response." 10 minutes. A thin cry drifted from the forest. "Scout." Claire lifted her head. Hank pulled once toward the trail, then looked back at Cole for permission. Cole's left knee had begun to stiffen from the drive and cold. He could follow, but not quickly enough to control a pursuit alone. Lena arrived 9 minutes later, followed by an ambulance unit. She wore a navy winter jacket and carried a patrol rifle across her chest. "We wait for the tactical team," she said after seeing the trail. "They are 25 minutes out." Scout cried again. Fainter. Claire opened Daniel's notebook with gloved hands. She found a map near the back and turned it toward them. A ravine had been circled northwest of the cabin. Beside it, Daniel had written, "Old trap line. Steel jaws beneath snow." "Mallory route?" Claire looked at Cole. "If Ash follows that trail, she will not see the traps." Cole tightened the black brace around his left knee. Lena watched him. "You will slow us down?" "Yes." It was not self-pity, only fact. "Hank leads. You cover. Claire handles Ash if she is caught. I make decisions and keep pace as long as I can." Owen, now conscious beneath the paramedic's care, raised one hand from the stretcher. "I will coordinate from here." "You have a head injury," Claire said. "I also have a radio and a bad disposition." No one argued with the second point. Cole clipped Hank's tracking line to the black harness Owen kept among the cabin equipment. Hank lowered his nose to Scout's blanket, then to the blood in the snow. His body aligned toward the trees. 4 puppies cried behind them, huddled beneath fresh towels while the paramedic guarded the cabin. Somewhere ahead, the 5th cried alone. Cole gave the command. "Track." Hank entered the forest. Lena followed with her weapon low and ready. Claire carried the medical pack and trap cutters. Cole came last, favoring his left leg but refusing to waste movement hiding it. The blood trail led northwest, toward the ravine Daniel had circled, toward the old steel traps buried beneath new snow. The forest swallowed the cabin light within 50 yards. Hank moved ahead on the long tracking line, nose close to the broken crust of snow. His black harness shifted over his shoulders as he worked. Following what the human eye could not hold together, Scout's scent, the bitter trace of sedative, Ash's blood, and the exhaust left by a snowmobile that had passed too recently. Lena Ortiz led the human line several paces behind him. Her patrol rifle remained pointed toward the ground, fingers straight along the frame, eyes moving between the trail and the dark spaces among the trees. Claire followed with the medical pack strapped tightly across her body. Trap cutters, gauze, warmed fluids, anticonvulsant medication, and a folded blanket made the bag heavier than it looked. Cole came last. He had secured a black brace around his left knee and taken a collapsible hiking pole from the cabin. The pole entered the snow before each step, testing depth and giving his damaged leg a fraction more time to accept his weight. No one asked whether he could keep going. They listened to the answer each time his boot landed. The trail descended northwest from the cabin. Human footprints crossed one another in the snow, but Ash's path was separate, uneven, hurried, and unmistakably made under her own power. She was not dragged, Claire said. Cole stopped beside a patch where blood marked the bark of a young pine. She followed them. She followed Scout. The distinction mattered. Near the next bend, Hank found a strip of gray fabric caught on a branch. Cole recognized the material from the lining of the transport equipment recovered near Ash. Lena photographed it before sealing it in a small evidence pouch. Farther ahead, a snowmobile track cut across the slope, then disappeared where the machine had passed over exposed rock. Beside it, Ash's paw prints became wider and deeper. She was falling, Claire said, then getting up again. Cole looked down the mountain. Rusk had not needed to force her forward. He had only needed Scout to cry. The cruelty of it was efficient. Hank stopped abruptly. His head lifted. The line went tight in Cole's hand. A sound carried from below, thin, high, and quickly smothered by the trees. Scout. Claire started forward. Lena caught her arm. Slow. Another sound followed. Not the puppy. A rough, broken growl rose from the ravine, sharpened by pain. Ash. The trail ended at the rim of a steep drop where spring runoff had cut a narrow channel through earth and stone. Snow covered the descent in uneven shelves. A fallen pine stretched across the ravine below, its exposed roots reaching into the air like dark fingers. Hank lowered himself near the edge. Cole handed the tracking line to Lena and studied the slope. Claire goes second. I go first. Your knee says otherwise, Lena replied. My knee is not carrying the trap tools. She looked at him for 1 second, then nodded. Cole descended sideways, placing the hiking pole before each boot. Halfway down, the snow gave way beneath his left foot. He slid several feet and caught a root with his free hand. Pain drove upward through his knee. He stayed still until the bright pressure behind his eyes receded. Above him, Hank leaned toward the slope. I am fine, Cole said. Lena's expression made it clear the statement had not passed review. Cole continued. The smell reached him before the bottom. Blood, wet fur, rust, and the chemical sweetness they had already learned to hate. Ash lay beneath the fallen pine. One front paw was caught in a steel foothold trap hidden beneath slush and needles. The jaws had closed above the foot, biting into the lower leg. Each time she shifted, the chain dragged against a buried anchor and pulled the trap tighter. Scout lay beneath her chest. The puppy was filthy, trembling, and breathing. Ash had curved her body around him despite the trap. Her wounded hind leg stretched awkwardly behind her, while her free front paw rested across Scout like a barrier. Her eyes found Cole. Pain had emptied them of recognition. Her lips drew back. The growl that left her was weak in volume and absolute in meaning. Cole stopped several yards away. Claire reached the bottom behind him and opened her medical pack. I need access to the spring, she whispered. If you move toward her now, she will bite. I know. Hank descended next, belly close to the snow. Lena kept hold of the tracking line but allowed him enough distance to choose his posture. The German shepherd stopped outside Ash's reach. He did not stare at Scout. He did not stand tall over the injured mother. Hank lowered his chest, turned his face slightly aside, and waited. Ash's growl continued. Then it faltered. Not because she trusted him, but because Hank had refused to make himself another threat she needed to calculate. Cole removed the rifle from his shoulder and placed it against the fallen trunk. His service pistol remained secured in its holster. He knelt. The cold entered through his uniform immediately. Ash. Her eyes snapped toward him. Cole opened one hand and placed it palm down on the snow. Scout is alive. The words meant nothing to her, but his voice had become part of the cabin. The stove, the blankets, the 5 small bodies gathered around her. 4 are waiting for you. Ash's breath came in hard bursts. Saliva darkened the fur along her muzzle. The trapped leg trembled. Claire circled slowly toward the spring mechanism. Ash's head followed her. Cole spoke again. You do not have to trust us. You only have to hold still long enough to hate us later. Claire glanced at him. That is your reassuring voice? It has a limited audience. Ash snapped as Claire moved one knee closer. The sound echoed under the fallen tree. Hank tensed but did not advance. Cole reached into Claire's pack and removed the folded blanket used beneath the puppies at the cabin. Milk, wool, smoke, and the scent of Ash's other 4 young clung to it. He slid the blanket across the snow. Ash smelled it. Her nostrils moved. For one brief moment, the ravine changed. The trap was still closed. Scout still shook beneath her. Pain still controlled the boundaries of her world. But the blanket carried proof that the rest of her litter remained somewhere beyond the trees. Ash lowered her muzzle to the cloth. Cole saw the decision pass through her body, not surrender, but endurance. Now, he said. Claire placed the long-handled cutters against the trap spring. The metal gave a small shriek. Ash jerked. The chain snapped tight, pulling her trapped leg sideways. She cried out and twisted toward Claire. Cole did not grab her. He moved the blanket closer to her nose and kept his hand visible. Ash, here. Hank pressed lower to the snow. Scout gave a weak squeak from beneath his mother. Ash froze at the sound. Claire reset the cutters. The spring is corroded, she said. It is not releasing evenly. What do you need? 10 seconds without movement. Cole looked at the trapped paw. Blood had begun to seep into the snow beneath it. You have 5. Claire shifted one boot against the trap frame and pressed down with both hands. Nothing. She changed the angle. The spring moved a fraction. Ash trembled from shoulders to tail. Cole spoke without deciding what to say first. He told her the stove at the cabin smoked when the wind came from the east. He told her Hank had stolen half a sandwich the previous winter and denied it with the confidence of an elected official. He told her Scout had already survived twice when every sensible measure suggested he should not have. The details were meaningless. The steadiness was not. Claire pushed again. The trap opened. Now, Cole reached beneath Ash's leg and pulled the paw clear. Claire released the pressure carefully, allowing the empty jaws to close. Ash collapsed over Scout. For several seconds, she did nothing except lick the puppy's back with short, frantic strokes. Claire moved to the injured paw. She applied pressure above the wound, checked circulation, then wrapped the leg with thick gauze and a compression bandage. The bones may be intact, she said. I cannot promise. Do not promise. Cole shifted Scout onto the warm blanket. The puppy tried to lift his head and failed. Claire measured a tiny dose of medication and placed it along his gums before tucking him inside her coat. He is cold, but the breathing is stable. Hank rose, not toward Ash, toward the ridge. His ears locked forward. The muscles along his back stiffened beneath the harness. Cole saw the change and reached for the rifle. A branch broke above them. Lena dropped behind the exposed root mass and brought her patrol rifle to her shoulder. Movement at 11 o'clock, she said. A figure appeared between the trees on the rim, gray-green coat. Broad shoulders, Rusk Danner raised a handgun. The shot struck the fallen pine above Cole's head. Wood burst outward. Snow dropped from the branches in a heavy sheet. Cole threw himself over Claire and the bundle beneath her coat. The impact of the gunshot did not remain in the ravine. It tore open another place. Stone corridor. Alarm lights. Eli ahead of him, one hand pressed to his side. Cole's radio screaming against his shoulder. A second doorway he had failed to clear. A fraction of a second he had spent looking the wrong way. The snow beneath Cole became tile. His hands stopped obeying him. Sound flattened into a high metallic pressure. He knew he had a rifle. He knew someone above them was armed. Neither fact reached the part of him capable of movement. Claire turned beneath him. Cole. He could not answer. Cole. Look at me. Her face entered the white noise in pieces. Hazel eyes, snow on dark blonde hair, blood on one glove that belonged to Ash and not Eli. Tremor, Cole heard himself say. There is no tremor. The word had come from another memory. Claire understood anyway. Snow, she said firmly, my voice, Hank. Scout is alive. Hank barked once, a short, controlled report, not an attack signal. The old live find alert Eli had taught him years before, a single bark to announce that someone breathing had been located. One bark, alive. Cole drew air into his lungs. Snow, Claire, Hank, Scout beneath her coat. Not the courthouse. Here. Rusk fired again. Lena answered with one controlled shot into the tree beside him, forcing him back from the ridge. "Police!" she shouted. "Drop the weapon and show your hands." Footsteps crashed through the timber above. Another man appeared behind Rusk, then disappeared as voices rose from the opposite side of the ravine. Owen's voice carried first. "State officers. On the ground." Cole pushed himself upright. He retrieved the rifle but did not fire. Lena maintained cover while two conservation officers moved in from the north, cutting off the snowmobile trail. Rusk tried to retreat. He made it 6 steps before an officer drove him into the snow and secured his arms behind his back. The second man surrendered beside the machine. Grant Mallory stood farther downslope near a cargo sled. His polished coat had been opened at the front. One glove was missing. In his bare hand, he held a phone, thumb moving rapidly across the screen. Beside him, loose pages burned in a shallow metal pan. "Drop the phone," Lena ordered. Grant looked up. His expression held no politeness now, only calculation. He threw the phone into the snow and lifted his hands. The fire had consumed the top pages, but Owen kicked snow across the pan before the rest could burn. Officers searched the cargo sled. Inside were steel traps, coated cable, restraint poles, a transport muzzle, sedative vials, and a compact speaker capable of playing recorded animal sounds, enough to connect Grant and Rusk to the abduction, the traps, and the attack. Not enough to prove the full breeding network. Not yet. Claire remained beside Ash. The mother dog no longer growled at Cole. She rested her muzzle over the blanket, breathing through pain while Scout warmed beneath Claire's coat. A movement from the trees drew Lena's weapon around. A man stumbled into view with both hands raised. Travis Bell. His uniform jacket was gone. Snow covered his hair, and panic had stripped the color from his face. The cracked digital watch remained on his wrist. "Do not shoot. Down on your knees," Lena ordered. Travis obeyed immediately. Cole approached slowly. "Where have you been?" Travis looked toward Grant. Grant did not look back. "I gave him schedules," Travis said. "Radio channels, checkpoint rotations." The confession left him in uneven breaths. "For money?" Cole asked. Travis nodded. "I thought he was moving unregistered dogs, avoiding inspections. I told myself it was paperwork and fines. You supplied the cabin detail. I did not know Rusk would attack Owen. I did not know they would take the puppy. But you knew they wanted Ash." Travis lowered his eyes. "Yes," Lena cuffed him. Travis did not resist. "There is a second facility," he said quickly. "North of Condon. Old timber processing site. The records are not at the ranch. Grant keeps them on a private server inside the office." Grant finally spoke. "He is lying to reduce his sentence." "Maybe," Cole said. "That is why we verify." Owen recovered Grant's phone from the snow and placed it in an evidence sleeve. The screen remained lit. A partially deleted message thread was still visible. Most of the text consisted of dates, transport codes, and payments. One line had not yet disappeared. Daniel matter was handled, no second mistake. Claire saw it over Owen's shoulder. Her hand stopped against Ash's bandage. For 2 years, Daniel's death had lived inside the word accident. The word had never comforted her. Now it no longer protected anyone. Ash heard the puppies before the cabin door opened. The 4 small voices rose from the kitchen in a disorderly chorus, hungry, frightened, alive. Claire and Cole carried Ash between them on a reinforced tarp. Moving carefully over the porch threshold, her front leg had been wrapped from paw to elbow, and the sedative Claire had given her in the ravine had softened her movements without fully quieting the panic in her eyes. Scout rested inside Claire's coat. The instant Ash heard the litter, she twisted against the tarp. "Easy," Claire said. "You are home." Ash did not care about the word. She cared about the sound. Cole lowered his side of the tarp before she could throw herself off it. Ash dragged her body toward the exercise pen, using her uninjured front paw and both hind legs. Pain pulled a low cry from her, but she continued. The 4 puppies pushed against the wooden crate when they smelled her. Scout answered from inside Claire's coat. Ash lifted her head. Claire placed him on the blanket beside his siblings. One by one, Ash touched them with her nose. The dark female with the narrow muzzle, the broad male who always found the warmest place. The 2 nearly identical puppies who slept tangled together, Scout last. She smelled each face, each belly, each trembling back. Only when she had counted all 5 by scent did the rigid line of her shoulders loosen. Ash collapsed beside the crate. Claire knelt immediately to examine the trapped leg. "She needs surgery," she said. "The swelling is increasing and I cannot tell whether the joint capsule has been damaged." "Can you do it here?" Cole asked. "No." The answer came without hesitation. "My clinic has imaging and sterile equipment. Owen's officers can secure the route once the storm clears." Ash growled when Claire touched the bandage, but the sound lacked force. Her muzzle remained close to the puppies. Hank lay beyond the barrier, chin resting on his paws. He had followed the rescue team back without once attempting to approach Ash. Now his amber eyes moved over the entire room. The injured mother, the 5 young, Claire's blood-stained gloves, Cole's swollen knee. Cole lowered himself against the cabinets. The old injury pulsed in time with his heartbeat. He watched Ash resist sleep because her puppies were breathing beside her. In the ravine, her refusal to leave Scout had looked like instinct. Here, it looked like evidence. Every person involved in Grant Mallory's operation had assumed fear would make Ash manageable. They had used confinement, pain, sedation, and the cries of her own puppy against her. Instead, every choice she made had drawn the truth closer. The first call came just before dawn. Owen stood beside the radio with a fresh dressing over his head, his silver mustache, making his expression difficult to read. He listened while a state laboratory technician confirmed that the sedative residue recovered from Ash and the cabin cloth matched a veterinary drug batch purchased 6 months earlier. The buyer had been a clinic called North Range Animal Services. No public clinic operated under that name. The registered address belonged to a property management company, controlled by one of Grant's subsidiaries. Owen wrote the details in his waterproof notebook. "1 link," he said. "Not the whole chain," Cole replied. "Chains are made of links." The second came from the GPS unit recovered from Grant's snowmobile. Grant had attempted to delete its route history. The deletion failed because the device automatically backed up data whenever it connected to the service network near his ranch. The restored records placed the snowmobile at 4 locations, Grant's property: the logging road where Cole found Ash, the accessed route behind Cal's cabin, and Morrell Creek on the night Daniel Whitaker died. Claire stood at the kitchen table when Lena read the report aloud. She did not react immediately. Her hand remained on the rim of a coffee cup she had not touched. "What time at Morrell Creek?" she asked. Lena gave her the recorded hour. Claire closed her eyes. Daniel's estimated time of death was 40 minutes later. No one filled the silence. The GPS data did not yet prove who had driven the machine or what had happened beside the creek, but the word accident had begun to lose its legal shelter. By afternoon, Travis Bell had signed a formal cooperation agreement. He sat in an interview room at the county office with an attorney present and gave names, dates, payment methods, and checkpoint numbers. He admitted allowing sealed transport vehicles through without inspection. He admitted deleting incident reports involving dogs found near Grant's property. He admitted giving Grant the frequencies and protection schedule used at Cole's cabin. He also identified 2 other county employees and 1 private dispatcher who had accepted money. Cole watched part of the interview through recorded video at the cabin. Travis looked smaller without his uniform. His shoulders sloped beneath a plain gray jail shirt, and the dark circles under his eyes appeared almost bruised. "I never saw the cages," Travis said. "I told myself they were breeding animals, licensing violations, rich people avoiding paperwork." The investigator asked whether he believed that now. Travis lowered his head. No. His cooperation might reduce his sentence. It would not return the years during which stolen dogs had passed through his checkpoints. Cole turned off the screen. Lena stood near the window. "You knew him a long time," she said. "I knew the version he showed at work. That is still something. It was not enough." Cole heard the judgment in his own voice and recognized how easily it could turn inward. Lena did too. "You are not responsible for every lie another deputy tells. I signed his performance reviews. You also requested the checkpoint files when he reacted to Grant's name. After Ash appeared, after evidence appeared." Cole looked at her. Lena's gaze remained direct. "Good policing is not knowing everything before anyone else," she said. "It is what you do once the facts stop being convenient." The words stayed with him. They did not forgive anything. They gave responsibility a shape he could carry. The federal team arrived shortly after dark. Special Agent Mara Keene entered the cabin, wearing a charcoal overcoat over black field clothing, her straight dark hair cut level with her jaw. She was 38, composed without appearing cold, and carried a rigid black case rather than a briefcase. Her eyes went first to the exercise pen, then to Ash's bandaged leg, then to the sealed evidence arranged on Cole's table. She set her coffee on the floor away from every document. Cole noticed. Mara introduced herself to Claire before anyone else. "I am sorry we are meeting through this case," she said. "I will not tell you what the evidence means until we can prove it." Claire nodded. "That is more honest than most condolences." Mara accepted the remark without defensiveness. The affidavit for a search warrant took hours. Mara separated fact from inference line by line. Ash's confirmed identity and stolen status, the damaged tattoo, the sedative batch, the transport seal linked to Daniel's notes, Grant's GPS data, Rusk's possession of traps and animal restraint equipment, the attempted abduction, Travis's statement, the message about returning the female and litter of 5. At 2:13 in the morning, a federal magistrate approved searches of Grant's ranch, the timber facility north of Condon, and the private computer server Travis had identified. Cole remained at the cabin. His knee was too swollen for field work, and Ash could not be moved until Claire stabilized her for surgery. Part of him resisted staying behind. The older instinct still measured usefulness by proximity to danger. Mara seemed to read it. "You found the living witness," she said before leaving. "Do not turn staying with her into a lesser assignment." The operation began before sunrise. Lena went with the state team. Owen joined the wildlife officers responsible for the animals. Mara supervised the seizure of digital evidence. Cole received updates through secure radio and brief video feeds. The timber facility had been disguised as an equipment storage site behind a locked logging gate. Inside, officers found 2 long insulated buildings without exterior windows. The first contained 12 dogs. The second contained 11. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Labrador Retrievers, and mixed working breeds stood or lay inside stacked metal runs. Several wore collars bearing false names. Others had shaved patches where identification tattoos had been altered. Portable scanners confirmed that many carried microchips registered to police departments, rescue organizations, and private handlers in 3 states. One elderly Malinois had been reported dead after disappearing from a contractor's vehicle 2 years earlier. He was alive, underweight, scarred, and alive. Owen's voice broke slightly when he reported the count. 23 total. Veterinary teams are moving in now. Cole looked toward Ash. She slept at last, her muzzle resting against the side of the puppy crate. The computer server proved worse. It contained breeding schedules, buyer contracts, altered veterinary certifications, transportation routes, photographs of dogs taken before theft, and records of payments made to officials who helped vehicles pass unchecked. One message from Grant to Rusk read, "Bring the female and the 5 back before they read the chip. Pale male already sold." Another file listed Astra beside a registered breeding male owned by Grant's facility. The male was found in the second building. DNA testing would require time, but preliminary records showed that Grant had deliberately paired them before Astra gave birth. The litter had been cataloged before the puppies entered the world. Scout had been assigned a price before he had opened his eyes. The fact landed differently than the threats or the gunfire. It reduced a living creature's entire future to one row in an account ledger. Claire stared at the copied contract displayed on Mara's tablet later that afternoon. He nearly died twice, she said, and someone had already written where he was supposed to go. Cole looked at Scout asleep against Ash's chest. He did not read the contract. Claire's mouth moved, almost a smile. No, he has been very unprofessional. The moment was small, but it changed the air. Not relief, resistance. The records concerning Daniel were recovered from a hidden archive under a false project name. Photographs showed vehicles entering the timber site. Several had Daniel's date stamps. An internal message from Rusk warned that Daniel had photographed a transport load and intended to meet Owen. Grant's response was brief. Make the sled look like failure. No contact after. A maintenance invoice showed replacement brake components purchased the following morning. Rusk asked for an attorney before he answered questions. By evening, he had offered a statement in exchange for consideration at sentencing. He confirmed that Grant ordered him to damage Daniel's snowmobile braking system and stage the wreck near Morell Creek. Rusk claimed he had not intended Daniel to die. The distinction changed nothing for Claire. Mara came to the clinic before Ash's surgery to deliver the formal notice. Daniel Whitaker's death had been reopened as a homicide investigation. Claire stood beneath the fluorescent lights with her coat still on. For several seconds, she looked at the official document without taking it. Cole expected anger or relief. Instead, she asked, will the original accident finding remain in the public record? Not once the case is formally amended, Mara said. His work was described as obsessive in 2 reports. We have recovered enough evidence to show his concerns were substantiated. Only then did Claire accept the paper. He was afraid near the end, she said. I thought admitting that would make him seem less brave. Mara shook her head. Fear does not weaken evidence. Claire looked toward the treatment room. No, I suppose it does not. Ash's surgery lasted nearly 3 hours. The trap had fractured one small bone and damaged tissue around the joint, but circulation remained intact. Claire repaired what she could, cleaned the wound thoroughly, and stabilized the leg. Ash might always limp. She would live. All 5 puppies remained stable under the supervision of a veterinary nurse. Scout's seizures had not returned after treatment. Grant was charged, initially, with conspiracy, theft of interstate property, obstruction, animal cruelty, assault-related offenses, evidence tampering, and multiple trafficking violations. The homicide case would proceed separately as digital evidence and Rusk's statement were verified. Several county employees were suspended. 2 were arrested. Travis entered a guilty plea and agreed to testify. Cole voluntarily surrendered his unit files, supervisory notes, and personal communications to the state review team. He made no request to protect the department's reputation. A badge, he understood, was not made safer by hiding what had been done beneath it. Late that night, Ash woke behind the barred door of the recovery kennel. Cole sat on the floor outside. He had removed his duty belt and folded his navy jacket beside him. The memorial coin rested in his closed hand, but he was not pressing its edge into his skin. Ash blinked through the remains of anesthesia. Her head turned toward the neighboring enclosure, where the 5 puppies slept beneath controlled warmth. Then she looked past them, at Cole. Slowly, Ash lifted her bandaged paw. She pressed it against the bottom of the kennel bars. Cole opened his hand and placed his palm on the floor opposite it. Metal remained between them. Neither tried to remove it. For once, staying on the other side was not failure. It was simply the closest he could safely be. And Ash, who had spent months learning that barriers meant captivity, left her paw beside his hand and closed her eyes. By the 3rd week, the cabin no longer belonged to silence. It belonged to feeding times written on the refrigerator, towels drying over chair backs, veterinary supplies stacked beside the sink, and 5 puppies who had begun to discover that their legs could carry them toward trouble. Cole woke before dawn because Scout had learned how to climb the folded edge of the wooden crate. The pale puppy hauled himself upward with solemn determination, reached the top, then tipped forward and landed nose first in a pile of clean towels. He made a sound of deep personal offense. Cole stood in the kitchen doorway wearing a dark thermal shirt and gray cargo pants, one hand resting against the frame. "You planned that badly." Scout shook his head and attempted the climb again. Hank watched from the living room side of the exercises pen. The retired K-9 lay with his front paws crossed, his black and tan coat warmed by the stove light. His expression suggested that standards had collapsed since the arrival of the younger generation. Ash remained beside the litter. Her front leg was still bandaged, though the heavy surgical wrap had been replaced by a lighter support. The trap injury had left stiffness through the joint, and she rose slowly. Yet the hollowed look had begun to leave her body. Her ash gold coat had regained some density along the shoulders, and her eyes no longer measured every doorway as an immediate route of attack. She still did not trust Hank near the puppies. Not completely. The first time he approached the barrier after her surgery, Ash had risen despite the pain and given a warning growl, strong enough to stop the entire room. Hank had sat down. He did not challenge her. He did not retreat in humiliation. He simply waited, head turned slightly aside. The next day, he sat 1 foot closer. A week later, Ash allowed him to lie beside the pen while the puppies slept. Trust arrived by inches too small to celebrate. Cole understood that kind best. He opened the gate that morning to change the blankets. Hank stayed in place until Cole gave a hand signal. Then the old K-9 entered slowly. Ash lifted her head. Hank did not approach the puppies directly. He walked to the loose corner of the blanket, caught it gently between his front teeth, and pulled it away from the cold floorboard where it had slipped. Scout attacked his muzzle. The puppy's jaws closed uselessly around the fur below Hank's chin. Hank looked at Cole. "You entered voluntarily," Cole said. Hank's left ear tilted in betrayal. Ash watched the exchange. Her lips did not lift. That was how the distance between them changed. Not through a grand acceptance, but because Hank corrected a blanket, tolerated Scout, and left before Ash needed him to. The 5 puppies began to separate into distinct personalities. Scout remained the smallest and behaved as if size were an administrative error that would soon be corrected. The darkest female rarely rushed toward anything. She sat behind Ash's shoulder and observed people before deciding whether they deserved her attention. Lena called her Echo because she seemed to repeat Hank's habit of studying a room before entering it. 2 broad-chested males competed over every object, including towels, food bowls, shoelaces, and 1 wooden spoon Claire had not intended to donate. Cole referred to them as trouble and other trouble until Claire informed him those were not acceptable medical records. The 5th puppy, a lighter female with 1 ear that leaned outward, followed Claire from one side of the cabin to the other. She slept beside the leather medical bag and cried whenever Claire put on her coat. Claire named her Willow. "You named one," Cole said. "I have paperwork." That is how it starts. Claire looked down at Scout, who was chewing the lace of Cole's boot. "You have been calling him Scout for 2 weeks. Cole glanced at her. "I have not." "Hank reacts when you say it." Hank's tail moved once. Cole pointed at him. Disloyal. The cabin changed around these small arguments. Cole learned the cries. Cold had a sharper edge than hunger. Fear came in short bursts. Hunger built until all 5 voices joined into a disorderly chorus that made reasonable thought impossible. At night, he still woke suddenly. The courthouse did not disappear simply because the puppies survived. Some nights, Cole opened his eyes to the remembered sound of gunfire. His hands searched the darkness before he knew where he was. His body expected tile beneath him, radio static at his shoulder, and Eli somewhere beyond the next door. The cabin always returned differently. Sometimes Hank pressed his weight against the bed. Sometimes Ash shifted beside the puppy pen, the tags on her temporary collar making one soft sound. Once, Scout began howling from the kitchen because he had climbed into a feed scoop and could not climb out. Cole stood in the dark hallway listening to the ridiculous noise. His pulse slowed. He went to free the puppy. Healing did not feel like peace. It felt like having more roads back. Claire reopened Daniel's old workroom at the clinic before summer. For 2 years, the door had remained closed behind boxes, maps, and equipment she could not decide whether to preserve or remove. Cole helped carry everything into the hallway while Claire sorted each object. She kept Daniel's field camera. She kept the black notebooks. She threw away 3 pairs of cracked rubber boots and an entire drawer of dried pens. Cole held up a rusted camping stove. Historic artifact? Fire hazard. Those categories overlap. Outside. He carried it out. Claire painted the room pale gray and installed stainless steel shelves, a warming cabinet, and 2 low recovery enclosures. A simple sign went on the door, Daniel Whitaker Wildlife Intake. She did not hold an opening ceremony. The first patient was a raven tangled in fishing line. The second was an injured fawn brought in by a family who had wrapped it in 3 quilts and attempted to feed it cereal. Claire returned to Cole's cabin that evening with mud up both sleeves. People need instructions printed directly on their foreheads, she said. Hank has been proposing that policy for years. Hank thumped his tail from the porch. The rehabilitation center began with less certainty. The county had seized a storage barn connected to one of Grant's shell companies. The building stood near the old timber road, half buried in weeds and filled with broken kennels. Lena found county funding. Owen found 3 retired contractors willing to work for food and the right to complain. Cole found that honest labor made room inside his head. They replaced wiring, rebuilt ventilation, poured drainage channels, and removed every cage that could not be repaired safely. Cole worked in a Navy canvas jacket and knee brace, measuring boards twice because Owen questioned every measurement once. "You place that latch too high," Owen said. "It is exactly where the plan shows. The plan was made by someone with better knees. That does not affect latch height. It affects wisdom." Lena leaned against the doorway with a clipboard. "You both understand that arguing is not a construction method." Owen looked at Cole. New generation lacks imagination. The center opened quietly at the beginning of autumn. Some of the 23 rescued dogs would eventually return to former handlers. Others could never work again. A few needed months before they could tolerate a leash, a metal bowl, or a person standing behind them. Cole did not promise outcomes. He gave them routine. Hank sometimes accompanied him but never entered an enclosure without invitation. Ash remained at the cabin until her recovery evaluation. Her former rescue team in Idaho sent photographs, certification records, and a red search harness she had once worn. The team's founder had died during the months Ash was missing, and the organization had since merged with another unit. They offered to take her back. They also admitted that returning to active search work might not serve her. A canine behavior specialist named Dr. Rowan Hale evaluated Ash over several weeks. Rowan was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s who watched more than she touched. She tested Ash's response to crates, unfamiliar handlers, search commands, loud noises, and separation from the puppies. Ash remembered the commands. Her body remembered the work. But enclosed transport spaces caused her to freeze, and the sound of a metal latch sent her searching frantically for an exit. Her injured leg tired after short sessions over uneven ground. She could perform parts of the job, Rowan told Cole. That does not mean asking her to perform them would be fair. Cole looked through the observation window. Ash stood in the fenced yard with her nose raised to the wind. What does she need? Predictability. Space. A handler who reads refusal as information rather than disobedience. Cole gave a quiet breath. She has made her standards clear. Rowan glanced at him. The harder question is whether you want her because she chooses you, or because you are afraid to be the one who lets her go. The words found their mark without cruelty. Cole thought about that question for days. He had rescued Ash. That did not make her his. The choice trial took place in a secure yard behind the rehabilitation center. No crowd gathered. Claire stood near the gate. Rowan's assistant waited at the far end with a leash and food. Cole remained beside the fence, farther away than either of them. Hank stayed outside the yard. The puppies had already begun gradual separation training and were resting inside the center. Ash entered alone. Her limp was now slight but permanent. She walked the perimeter first, smelling each post and gate. Then she stood, facing the open stretch beyond the fence, where the forest rose toward the hills. Cole did not call her. He kept both hands at his sides. Ash looked at Claire. Claire smiled, but did not reach. Ash crossed toward Rowan's assistant, accepted the offered treat, then moved on. She came to Cole last. For one moment, she stood several feet away. The wind lifted the pale fur at her neck. Cole felt the old urge to control the outcome, to offer his hand, speak her name, make himself easier to choose. He did none of it. Ash stepped forward. She lowered her head and pressed it against his left leg, just above the knee brace. Cole closed his eyes. His hand settled lightly against her shoulder. "All right," he whispered. Ash stayed. A year passed. Grant Mallory was convicted on federal trafficking, conspiracy, obstruction, animal cruelty, and related charges. The homicide case connected to Daniel ended in additional convictions after Rusk's testimony and digital evidence survived court review. Grant's ranch was forfeited and transferred into a regional rescue partnership. The former breeding barn became a long-term recovery wing. Daniel's name remained over the wildlife treatment room at Claire's clinic. The 5 puppies grew into 5 different futures. Scout stayed with Cole, Ash, and Hank. He never became as large as the others, but he developed astonishing confidence and no respect for closed doors. Echo joined Lena after showing a natural talent for tracking and calm, live-find indication. Her training proceeded slowly, under handlers who knew exactly what had happened to her mother. The 2 broad males entered support dog programs. One was paired with a retired police dispatcher who could no longer tolerate crowded rooms. The other went to a firefighter recovering from years of accumulated trauma. Willow failed every formal working assessment by becoming distracted whenever someone appeared sad. Claire called this a specialized qualification. Willow became the rehabilitation center's education dog and spent most days following Claire between treatment rooms. Cole placed Eli's memorial coin in a shadow box near the center entrance. Beneath it was a line engraved in simple black letters. "You do not have to run toward every gunshot. Sometimes the job is to stay with the lives that still need you." The coin no longer lived against Cole's ribs. He still visited it. That was different from carrying it as a sentence. The first snow of the next winter arrived over Seeley Lake near dusk. It came gently, catching in the pines and whitening the yard without closing the road. Hank lay on the cabin porch, his muzzle resting between his paws. More gray had appeared around his mouth. Ash stood near the fence. Scout raced across the yard, followed by Echo, who was visiting with Lena and the other 3 grown puppies home for the center's winter gathering. For one afternoon, all 5 ran together again. Ash gave one sharp bark. The young dogs turned. Not immediately, not gracefully, but they returned. Claire stepped out of the cabin carrying 2 cups of coffee. Willow followed at her heel, then abandoned all loyalty when Scout found a fallen glove. Cole stood in the doorway. Once, that door had opened onto a cold room arranged for 1 man and 1 dog. Nothing inside had required explanation, compromise, or hope. Now the floor carried too many paw prints. A feeding chart remained taped crookedly to the wall, though no one needed it anymore. Claire's scarf hung beside Cole's police jacket. Lena's laughter came from the yard. Owen was arguing with someone near the barn about snow tires. The house had not become quiet. Cole no longer wanted it to. Claire handed him a cup. "You are staring. I have been told that does not mean nothing is there." She recognized her own words from the morning after the lilies. A nervous tree? Something like that. They stood together beneath the porch light. Cole watched Ash settle beside Hank. Scout dropped into the snow between them, still pale, still smaller, still alive. Cole had once believed he had carried a mother and 5 newborn puppies out of winter. That was true. It was not the whole truth. Ash had followed her stolen child into a trap and led them to the people who had built it. The puppies had filled the empty hours Cole once guarded as if silence were safety. Hank had shown him, again and again, that staying present was its own form of courage. and Claire had entered the cabin without asking him to become someone untouched by what had happened. Behind Cole, the stove burned steadily. Ahead of him, snow gathered on a family no one had planned, and none of them had reached alone. Winter had found the house again. This time, it could not keep anything inside frozen. Sometimes healing does not mean leaving the past behind. It means learning to carry love without letting grief become a prison. Cole could not save everyone he had lost, but he discovered that staying beside the lives still within reach was also a form of courage. Perhaps God's grace often arrives this way, not through a great miracle, but through one wounded soul finding another and choosing not to walk away. May you find peace in the people, animals, and quiet moments that remind you there is still something worth staying for. Tell us what this story meant to you in the comments, and subscribe to join us for more stories of loyalty, hope, and second chances.